I noticed it while preparing Her Majesty's gala gown, a peculiar discoloration on the fabric that shouldn't have been there. 23 years as the royal family's master tailor had taught me to trust my instincts, and something about that pale yellow stain made my hands tremble. My name is Edward Blackwood, and until that moment, my greatest concern had been ensuring the perfect drape of a royal hem. Now, as I stand in my private workshop within Buckingham Palace, I realize I'm holding evidence of what could be the most sophisticated assassination attempt in British history. The fabric before me, an exquisite champagne silk shipped directly from our most trusted supplier in Lyon, had passed through dozens of security checkpoints, yet here it was, contaminated. I'd recognize the telltale signs only because my grandfather, a chemist before the war, had drilled into me the markers of certain toxic compounds. That particular discoloration, combined with the faint almond scent, it could only mean one thing. My fingers hover over the palace's internal security line, but I hesitate. Who can I trust? The fabric had been handled by our usual courier service, passed through regular palace security, and stored in the climate-controlled room where I keep all royal garments. Someone with intimate knowledge of palace operations had to be involved. The grandfather clock in the corner strikes 9, its chimes echoing through my workshop like a death knell. The gala is in 3 days. In 72 hours, Her Majesty will expect to don this gown before 300 of Europe's most influential people. My mind races through the possibilities. If I alert security now, whoever planted the contaminated fabric might simply try another method. If I stay quiet, I might have a chance to uncover the truth myself. I carefully seal the fabric in a garment bag and lock it in my private safe. Years of service have earned me the privilege of keeping my own security measures. A privilege that might now prove crucial. Taking out my leather-bound notebook, I begin listing everyone who had access to the fabric from the moment it left France. The list grows longer than I'd like. Marcus Wellington, head of palace security, Lady Sarah Rothschild, events coordinator James Cooper, customs liaison Elena Rossi, my assistant Jeffrey Stanford, royal household manager, and at least a dozen security personnel and servants. A soft knock at the door makes me jump. "Come in," I call out, quickly sliding the notebook into my jacket pocket. Elena peers in, her dark eyes bright with their usual enthusiasm. "Mr. Blackwood," Lady Sarah asked about the progress on the gown. She'd like to schedule a preliminary fitting for tomorrow morning. I study my assistant's face carefully. 5 years she's worked with me, and I've never had reason to doubt her loyalty. But now, paranoia colors every interaction. "Tell Her Majesty's gown needs some special attention. We'll have to postpone until the day after tomorrow." Elena's perfectly shaped eyebrows rise slightly. "But sir, that's cutting it rather close to the gala, isn't it?" "Sometimes perfection requires additional time," I reply smoothly, years of diplomatic interactions with royalty serving me well. Better a slight delay than a rushed job for Her Majesty. After Elena leaves, I pull out my phone and search for news about any recent suspicious deaths or incidents involving contaminated clothing. Nothing obvious appears, but a small article catches my eye. A French textile worker found dead in his apartment 3 weeks ago, cause unknown. The article mentions he worked at one of Lyon's premier silk manufacturers. My hands grow cold. I need more information, but I can't risk raising suspicions. The palace library maintains archives of staff records and security protocols. Perhaps there's something there that could help me understand who might have both the access and expertise to attempt something like this. As I make my way through the palace's ornate corridors, I notice details that never bothered me before. The cameras tracking every movement, the guards with their earpieces and carefully blank expressions, the way other staff members nod and smile as they pass. Any one of them could be involved. The library is empty when I arrive, its vast shelves of leather-bound books stretching into shadows. I find the staff records easily enough. They're meticulously maintained, updated quarterly. But as I begin searching through recent personnel changes, I hear footsteps approaching. I quickly replace the volume and grab a book about historical royal fashions instead. Lady Sarah enters, her heels clicking against the marble floor. "Edward, what a surprise to find you here," she says, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Searching for inspiration for Her Majesty's gown? One can never be too well versed in tradition, I reply, holding up the book. Though I must admit, some of these Victorian designs were rather impractical. She laughs, but there's something forced about it. Speaking of the gown, Elena mentioned you're requesting a delay in the fitting. Is everything all right? Merely ensuring perfection, my lady. You know how particular I am about my work. Indeed. She studies me for a moment. Well, don't let me interrupt your research. Though you might find the archives in the East Wing more helpful, they have quite a collection on modern royal fashion. After she leaves, I remain still, my heart pounding. The East Wing archives have been closed for renovation for months. Either Lady Sarah is testing me, or she's remarkably uninformed for someone in her position. I wait until evening before returning to my workshop. The palace takes on a different character after dark. Shadows lengthen, voices echo strangely, and even the most innocent sounds seem sinister. As I unlock my door, I notice something's different. The air feels disturbed, as if someone has recently been here. My safe appears untouched, but when I check my notebook, the list of names I wrote earlier has gained a slight smudge on one corner, as if someone read it while wearing gloves. They know I know. The game has begun, and I have less than 72 hours to prevent a tragedy. But as I stand in my workshop, surrounded by the tools and fabrics of my trade, I realize I have one advantage. Whoever is behind this doesn't know that I recognize the poison. They likely believe I only suspect something is wrong with the fabric, not that I've identified the specific threat. I take out my phone and send a text to Elena. Need to review all fabric shipments from the past month. Early morning tomorrow? Her reply comes quickly. Of course, sir. 7 a.m.? I stare at the message, wondering if I'm sending it to a conspirator or an ally. Either way, tomorrow I'll begin pulling threads to see what unravels. The grandfather clock strikes midnight, and I realize I've been standing in darkness for over an hour. As I prepare to leave, I notice something that makes my blood run cold. A single golden thread on the floor near my desk. It's from the contaminated fabric, but I'm certain I sealed it all away. Someone has been in my safe. Dawn creeps over Buckingham Palace like a hesitant watercolor, painting the ancient stones in shades of uncertainty. I haven't slept. The golden thread I found sits in a sealed evidence bag in my breast pocket, a constant reminder of what's at stake. Elena arrives precisely at 7, carrying 2 cups of coffee, a habit she's maintained since her first day. I watch her set them down, wondering if today might be the last time I trust this simple gesture. I pulled the shipping manifests you requested, Mr. Blackwood, she says, sliding a folder across my desk. Though I must admit, it's unusual for you to want to review past deliveries. Unusual times call for unusual measures, I reply, opening the folder. Tell me, Elena, do you remember anything strange about the lion shipment? Any deviation from normal procedures? She furrows her brow, a gesture I've seen countless times during our work together. Now that you mention it, there was something odd. The courier. It wasn't our regular person. The company said Marcel was ill. My pulse quickens. Did you get the replacement's name? Of course. Standard protocol. She pulls out her phone, scrolling through notes. Thomas Reed. He had all the proper credentials. I make a show of reviewing the manifests while my mind races. A new courier, a dead textile worker in Lyon, and contaminated silk. The threads are starting to connect, but the pattern they form is troubling. Sir? Elena's voice pulls me from my thoughts. There's something else. Lady Sarah has been asking questions about your suppliers. She seemed particularly interested in our French connections. I keep my expression neutral, but my suspicions about Lady Sarah intensify. Did she mention why? Something about updating security protocols for royal suppliers, but Elena lowers her voice. I overheard her on the phone yesterday, speaking French. My French isn't perfect, but I'm certain I heard the words, change of plans, and tomorrow night. Before I can respond, a knock interrupts us. Geoffrey Stanford, the royal household manager, enters without waiting for acknowledgement. a small power play he's always enjoyed. "Edward, good morning." His smile is practiced, perfect, too perfect. "Her Majesty has requested a private word regarding the gala. She's in the blue drawing room." My heart pounds. The Queen never summons me directly. All interactions are typically arranged through her staff. Either she's genuinely concerned about the gown's delay, or... "Of course," I respond, standing. "Elena, please continue reviewing those records. Pay special attention to any irregularities in the Lion shipments." The walk to the blue drawing room feels like a journey through enemy territory. Every corridor holds memories now tainted by suspicion. I've walked these halls for decades, watching young princes grow into men, princesses into queens. The palace's secrets have always been part of its charm, until now. Her Majesty sits by the window, morning light casting her in silhouette. At 87, she carries herself with the same dignity that's defined her reign. As I bow, I notice we're not alone. Marcus Wellington, head of palace security, stands quietly in the corner. "Mr. Blackwood," the Queen begins, her voice carrying its familiar gentle authority. "We understand there are concerns about our gala gown." I choose my words carefully. "Some minor complications have arisen, Your Majesty. I assure you they will be resolved well before the event." "These complications," Marcus interjects, stepping forward. "Do they pose any risk to Her Majesty?" The question hangs in the air like smoke. Does he know? Is this an offer of help or a subtle threat? "Every stitch I sew is dedicated to Her Majesty's comfort and safety," I reply diplomatically. "I would never allow any risk to reach her person." The Queen studies me with eyes that have witnessed over 8 decades of court intrigue. "We have always valued your dedication, Edward. If there is anything you need to share..." For a moment, I'm tempted to tell her everything, but the golden thread in my pocket reminds me that the palace has been compromised. Until I know the extent of the conspiracy, even this room isn't safe. "Your Majesty honors me with her concern," I say. "I simply require one more day to ensure the gown meets my standards." After leaving the blue drawing room, I take a circuitous route back to my workshop, using the servants' corridors I've learned over the years. As I pass the palace kitchens, I catch a glimpse of Lady Sarah speaking intently with someone in chef's whites. She's holding what appears to be a floor plan of the grand ballroom. Back in my workshop, I find Elena gone and a note on my desk. "Called to assist with seating arrangements. E." I unlock my safe, relieved to find the contaminated fabric still sealed. But as I turn to my desk, I notice something that stops me cold. My leather notebook is sitting at a slightly different angle than I left it. Someone has been here again. The grandfather clock chimes 10, each strike echoing like an accusation. I have roughly 60 hours until the gala. 60 hours to prevent a catastrophe. But now I face a new dilemma. Someone knows I'm investigating, and I've likely been marked either as an asset to be eliminated or a pawn to be used. I pull out my phone and send a text to an old friend at Scotland Yard. "Need to discuss that antique fabric preservation technique you mentioned. Lunch today?" It's a code we established years ago for emergencies. I pray he remembers. As I wait for a response, I begin sketching a new gown design, one that appears identical to the original, but with subtle differences only a master tailor would notice. If I'm forced to proceed with the fitting, I'll need a convincing decoy. A soft beep from my phone. "Usual place, 1 p.m., bring samples." I begin gathering my thoughts and evidence, but movement in the corridor outside catches my attention. Through the gap under my door, I see shadows pausing, then moving on. Someone's watching my workshop. The game has evolved. I'm no longer simply investigating a threat. I'm being hunted by those behind it. But they don't realize that a lifetime of dressing the powerful has taught me more than just tailoring. I know every secret passage in this palace, every hidden door, every forgotten corridor. More importantly, I know its people, their habits, their loyalties, their weaknesses. As I prepare to leave for my lunch meeting, I notice Elena's coffee cup still sitting on my desk. She never leaves without finishing her coffee. I pick up the cup, noting the lipstick stain on the rim, the wrong shade for Elena. Someone is already impersonating my assistant. The real Elena could be in danger, or she could be part of the plot. Either way, I can no longer trust the one person I thought might be an ally. The walls are closing in, and time is running out. The cafe across from Scotland Yard is a deliberate choice. Neutral ground, public enough to be safe, private enough for secrets. Inspector James Harrison sits at our usual corner table, his coffee untouched. 30 years of friendship have taught me his tells. The tight line of his mouth, the way his fingers drum silently on the table. He's worried. "You're playing with fire, Edward," he says as I sit down. No greeting, no pleasantries. There's chatter in certain circles. People asking questions about you. I slide a paper napkin across the table, the names of key players written in my precise Tailor's hand. I need to know if any of these people have connections to Lion, particularly in the last 3 months. James glances at the names, his expression darkening. Lady Sarah Rothschild was in France 6 weeks ago, officially for a charity event, but... He pauses, checking his phone. There's something else. That textile worker who died? His autopsy results were just classified by French intelligence. A waiter approaches. We fall silent, ordering sandwiches neither of us intends to eat. Once he's gone, James leans forward. "The palace has been compromised at the highest levels," he whispers. "We've suspected for months, but couldn't prove it. Whatever you've stumbled onto, it's bigger than an assassination attempt." "What do you mean?" "Think, Edward. Why target the Queen at a public gala? It's messy, unpredictable. Unless..." He lets the thought hang. "Unless the assassination isn't the real goal. Unless it's a distraction." My phone buzzes. A text from the fake Elena. "Mr. Blackwood, urgent meeting with Lady Sarah at 3 p.m. regarding gala seating arrangements." "They're trying to corner me," I murmur, showing James the message. He nods grimly. "Go to the meeting. Act normal. I'll have my people start digging into Lady Sarah's French connections." He hesitates. "Edward, if I don't contact you by midnight, assume I've been compromised." Back at the palace, I take the long route to Lady Sarah's office, using the time to think. The pieces are starting to form a pattern. The French connection, the classified autopsy, the gala's strategic timing. What if the contaminated gown isn't meant to kill, but to incapacitate? Create chaos during a crucial moment? I check my watch. 2 hours until the meeting. Time to take a risk. The palace's old service tunnels run like veins beneath the official corridors. Most have been sealed off, but I've maintained my own set of keys. The tunnel leading to the security office is narrow, damp, and perfect for eavesdropping. Through the ventilation shaft, I hear Marcus Wellington's voice. "Everything in place for tomorrow night." The French ambassador confirmed his attendance. "And Blackwood?" Lady Sarah's distinctive tone. "Still investigating. He's meeting you at 3. Good. Once he's dealt with, proceed with Phase 2. The Americans won't know what hit them." Americans? My mind races. The gala guest list includes 3 high-ranking U.S. diplomats, all involved in sensitive trade negotiations. A phone rings in the office above. "Yes?" Marcus answers. "I see. No, I'll handle Harrison myself." My blood runs cold. James. I need to warn him, but using my phone could give away my position. As I retreat through the tunnel, my foot catches on something, a loose brick. Behind it, a flash of white catches my eye. It's an envelope, old and water-stained. Inside, I find photographs dated 3 months ago. Lady Sarah in Lion, meeting with a man I recognize from palace security files, a former MI6 agent who supposedly died last year. The pieces click together. This isn't just an assassination plot. It's a coup. The gala is cover for something bigger. But why hide evidence down here? Unless someone else is investigating too. I make my way back to my workshop with 15 minutes to spare before the meeting. The real Elena might be my only remaining ally, but I have no way to contact her safely. As I check the contaminated fabric one last time, I notice something I missed before. A tiny maker's mark on the silk's edge, almost invisible unless you know where to look. It's not from Lion. The silk is a forgery, expertly crafted but not from our usual supplier, which means the entire Lion connection is a false trail. We're all looking in the wrong direction. A knock at my door. Mr. Blackwood, it's the fake Elena. Lady Sarah is ready for you. Just a moment, I call out, quickly photographing the maker's mark. As I do, my phone lights up with a text from an unknown number. Real Elena. Safe. Don't trust Sarah. Check the Queen's 1953 coronation robes. The coronation robes? They're stored in the palace archives, untouched for decades. What could they possibly have to do with... Then it hits me. The archives are directly below the grand ballroom where the gala will be held. Mr. Blackwood? The fake Elena knocks again, more insistently. I straighten my tie, check that the evidence is secure in my hidden pocket, and open the door. The woman wearing Elena's face smiles with Elena's lips, but the eyes are all wrong, cold, calculating. Shall we? She gestures toward Lady Sarah's office. As we walk, I count cameras, note guard positions, map potential escape routes. The palace I've known for decades has become a labyrinth of threats and surveillance. Even the paintings seem to watch our progress. Lady Sarah's office door stands open, warm afternoon light spilling into the corridor. She sits at her desk, elegant as always, a chess player waiting to make her move. Edward, do come in. She smiles. We have so much to discuss. I step inside, hearing the door close behind me. The fake Elena takes up position there, blocking my exit. I must say, Lady Sarah begins, you've led us on quite a chase these past 2 days. Very impressive for a simple tailor. We all have our talents, I reply carefully. Some of us are good at keeping secrets, others at uncovering them. And which are you, Edward? Before I can answer, my phone buzzes. A text from James. Get out now. Lady Sarah's smile turns predatory. Ah, it seems Inspector Harrison has regained consciousness. Unfortunate timing. The fake Elena moves away from the door, her hand reaching into her jacket. But she's made a crucial mistake. She's forgotten that I designed this room's curtains 15 years ago. With one sharp tug on the hidden cord by my left hand, the heavy drapes crash down, throwing the room into chaos. I'm moving before they hit the floor, years of muscle memory guiding me through the darkness. A gun appears in Lady Sarah's hand, but she's facing the wrong way. I'm already through the private door behind her desk, the one that connects to the old service corridor. As I run, I hear her shout, "Lock down the palace! Find him!" But they don't know what I know. They don't know about the passage behind the coronation robes, or why those robes suddenly matter so much. They don't know I've finally figured out their real plan. The grandfather clock in my workshop chimes 3 times, its sound reaching me even here in the darkness of the palace's forgotten spaces. 48 hours until the gala. 48 hours to prevent not just an assassination, but something far worse. And somewhere in this labyrinth, the real Elena is waiting with answers that could change everything. The palace archives smell of history and secrets, leather, parchment, and the peculiar mustiness that comes with age. I navigate through the stacks by memory, my phone's flashlight too risky to use. Above, I can hear the sounds of the search. Rapid footsteps, urgent voices, doors being thrown open. The coronation robes section is in the furthest corner, protected by climate-controlled glass cases. Even in the dim emergency lighting, they gleam with ancient majesty. But I'm not here for the robes themselves. You figured it out, a whisper behind me. I spin around to find the real Elena emerging from behind a shelf, looking exhausted but alive. The robes are just a marker. For what's beneath them, I reply, studying her face for any sign of deception. The old tunnel network. She nods. It's not just any tunnel. During the coronation, they built a secure bunker down here, a fallback point in case of emergency. It's been sealed for decades, but 2 months ago. Lady Sarah's renovation project, I finish. The East Wing closure wasn't about renovations at all. They've been modifying the bunker, installing modern equipment. I found out by accident, saw something I shouldn't have while delivering fabric samples. She pulls out a small notebook. I've been tracking their movements, their conversations. Tomorrow's gala isn't just a gathering of diplomats. It's a meeting of intelligence chiefs from 5 nations. The pieces click into place. The contaminated fabric, it's not meant to kill. It's an incapacitating agent. Exactly. Once the symptoms start, protocol demands moving all high-value targets to the nearest secure location. The bunker. I breathe. They're forcing an evacuation to the bunker. But why? A sound above makes us both freeze. Footsteps, directly over our heads. Elena pulls me behind a massive shelf of ceremonial garments. Because the bunker has been compromised, they've turned it into a surveillance hub. Once the intelligence chiefs are inside, every secret, every code, every defense protocol they know becomes vulnerable. And if anyone investigates afterward, all evidence points to a terrorist attack using contaminated fabric from France. The full scope of the conspiracy staggers me. Lady Sarah gets to play the hero who evacuated everyone to safety, while Marcus Wellington's team records everything. Elena's voice turns bitter. The perfect intelligence coup. No weapons, no violence, just carefully manipulated fear. Another sound, closer this time. Elena tenses. We need to move. They'll check here eventually. Wait. I reach into my pocket and pull out the photograph of the maker's mark. The fabric isn't from Lion. Do you recognize this mark? She studies it, eyes widening. This is impossible. This mark, it's from a private workshop in Moscow. I saw it once during my training. Training? A door slams somewhere in the archives. Elena grabs my arm. There's something I need to show you, but not here. The old wine cellar. You know the way? I nod. The palace's wine cellar predates the archives, its entrance hidden behind a false wall. As we make our way there, ducking between shelves and freezing at every sound, I realize I'm following someone I no longer fully understand. The cellar is pitch black and smells of earth and old stone. Elena leads me to the furthest corner, where ancient bottles sleep in their racks. She pulls out her phone, illuminating a small space between two shelves. Before I was your assistant, I had another life. She rolls up her sleeve, revealing a small tattoo. A double-headed eagle. Russian intelligence. Deep cover. I step back instinctively, but she grabs my wrist. I was sent to monitor the palace, nothing more. But 6 months ago, I discovered Lady Sarah's operation. My handlers, they wanted to let it play out, gather intelligence on everyone involved. But you didn't agree. This goes beyond politics, Edward. If they succeed, if they get what they want from those intelligence chiefs. She shakes her head. The balance of power shifts permanently. No more rules, no more boundaries. Just chaos. Why tell me this now? Because in 20 minutes, Lady Sarah is meeting with her real masters in the old chapel. I can get you in through the priest's door, but she hesitates. Once you see who's really behind this, there's no going back. Before I can respond, my phone vibrates. A message from James. Alive. Compromised. Don't trust Miss Real target. Ghost key. Ghost key. The term hits me like a physical blow. I've heard it exactly once, years ago when I accidentally overheard a conversation between the Queen and her private secretary. Something about a last resort protocol, a final safeguard for the Commonwealth's most dangerous secrets. The intelligence chiefs are a smokescreen, I realize. They want something specific. Elena's expression confirms it. The gala, the contaminated fabric, the bunker. It's all elaborate theater. During the evacuation, someone will access the Queen's private study. They know the ghost key protocol is hidden there. How do you know about... Because I was sent to find it. Her voice cracks slightly. But I've seen what power does to people, Edward. What it turns them into. That's why I've been helping you, leaving clues, trying to stop this without exposing my position. More footsteps above, and voices now, getting closer. The chapel, Elena whispers. We have 15 minutes. Are you willing to risk everything to stop them? I think of my years of service, of the trust placed in me, of the palace that's been my home. I think of the Queen's eyes this morning, studying me, perhaps knowing more than she let on. Lead the way. We slip out of the cellar through a maintenance shaft, emerging into a narrow courtyard. The chapel's spire looms against the darkening sky. Somewhere in the palace, a clock strikes 4. 44 hours until the gala. 44 hours to prevent a catastrophe. But first, I need to look into the eyes of those who would burn down centuries of tradition for power. And pray I survive what I see. The priest's door creaks softly as Elena guides us into the chapel's shadowy interior. Centuries of prayers seem to whisper from the ancient stones. We position ourselves behind the ornate choir screen, its intricate woodwork providing perfect concealment while allowing us to observe the nave below. "Remember," Elena breathes, barely audible. "Whatever you see, whatever you hear, stay absolutely silent." The chapel door opens. Lady Sarah enters first, followed by Marcus Wellington. The click of her heels echoes off the vaulted ceiling. But it's the third person who makes my blood freeze. Geoffrey Stanford, the royal household manager, pushing a wheelchair. In it sits Lord Edmund Blackwood. My father. Impossible, I mouth silently. My father suffered a stroke 5 years ago. He's been living in a care facility in Scotland, barely able to communicate. At least that's what I was told. "Your son has become problematic, Edmund." Lady Sarah's voice carries clearly in the chapel's perfect acoustics. "Perhaps you should have kept him closer, taught him the true meaning of power." My father's voice, stronger than should be possible, replies, "Edward was always too principled, like his mother. That's why we kept him in plain sight, thinking he'd never look beyond his precious fabrics and threads." Elena's hand finds mine in the darkness, squeezing in warning or comfort. I'm not sure which. The chapel's side door opens again. 2 more figures enter. A tall man in a beautifully cut suit, his silver hair gleaming in the dimmed lights, and beside him, the real Elena. My companion whispers. I turn to look at the woman beside me, but she's already pressing something into my hand, a small USB drive. "Everything you need to know is here. Your father, the ghost key, all of it. I'm sorry." Before I can stop her, she steps out from behind the screen. "It's done," she announces to the group below. "He took the bait." My world tilts on its axis. A trap. Of course it was a trap. But why? "Edward," my father's voice rings out. "Join us, son. It's time you learned your true inheritance." I remain hidden, mind racing. The USB drive feels heavy in my palm. Whatever game they're playing, they wanted me to have this information. But why go through such an elaborate deception? "The problem with Tailors," the silver-haired man speaks with a slight Eastern European accent, "is their attention to detail. They notice things others miss, like a certain maker's mark perhaps. They know I'm here, have known all along." I stand, stepping out from behind the screen with all the dignity my profession has taught me. "Why the charade?" I ask, descending the choir stairs. "Why not simply tell me the truth?" "Because, dear boy," my father smiles, and it's a smile I've never seen before. Cold, calculating, triumphant. "We needed to test your resourcefulness. The Ghost Key protocol requires certain qualities in its guardians." "I don't understand." Lady Sarah laughs softly. "Of course you don't. You thought this was about assassination attempts and coups. It's so much simpler, and so much more complex, than that. The Ghost Key," the silver-haired man explains, "is not a single protocol. It's a bloodline, a genetic inheritance passed down through carefully selected families. Families like yours." My father wheels himself forward. "Why do you think you've always had such steady hands, such perfect recall of patterns and details? Why do you think the Queen herself requested you as her personal tailor? Your position was no accident, son. You were born for it." The contaminated fabric, I realize. The whole conspiracy. A test. Elena, the real Elena, steps forward. "We needed to see if you could uncover the truth, if you could piece together the puzzle. Tomorrow's gala isn't about intelligence chiefs or secret bunkers. It's your initiation." My father reaches into his jacket and removes an antique key. This opens a door that hasn't been opened in 30 years. Behind it lies the truth about what really controls the great powers of this world. The question is, Edward, are you ready to step through? I look at each face in turn. Lady Sarah's elegant confidence, Marcus Wellington's military bearing, the silver-haired man's calculating gaze, Elena's both Elena's careful neutrality, and my father, somehow orchestrating everything from a wheelchair that might not even be necessary. The Queen knows, I say. It's not a question. The Queen, the silver-haired man smiles, is merely another guardian, as her father was before her, and his father before him. The monarchy isn't about divine right, Edward. It's about keeping secrets. And if I refuse, then you walk away, my father says simply. Return to your workshop. Continue making beautiful clothes for beautiful people. Live in ignorance of the true tapestry being woven around you. But know this, you can never unsee what you've already seen. I finger the USB drive in my pocket. And this? Insurance, Elena. The fake Elena steps closer. Proof that everything we're telling you is true. View it or destroy it. Your choice. The chapel falls silent. Dust motes dance in the fading light streaming through stained glass windows. Somewhere in the palace, a clock chimes 5. 43 hours until the gala. 43 hours to decide, accept my apparent destiny as keeper of world-changing secrets, or reject my inheritance and live with the knowledge that everything I believed about my life, my father, my profession, was carefully constructed fiction. But there's a third option, one they haven't considered, because they don't know about James Harrison's last message, or what Ghost Key really means to those who created it. They don't know that a tailor's greatest skill isn't his steady hands or perfect recall, it's his patience. The difference between a good tailor and a great one lies not in the stitches everyone sees, but in the ones they don't. The hidden seams that hold everything together. Standing in the chapel, surrounded by architects of deception, I think of all the hidden seams in my life. The careful way my father steered me toward tailoring. The coincidences that led to my palace position. The years spent learning every corridor, every passage, every secret space within these walls. They didn't create a master tailor. They created a key. Time grows short, the silver-haired man says. What is your answer, Edward? I withdraw the USB drive from my pocket, holding it up to the light streaming through stained glass. Before I decide, I have a question. Why now? Why reveal everything at this particular moment? My father's expression flickers, the first genuine emotion I've seen from him. Because change is coming. The old orders are crumbling. We need to consolidate power before... Before what, Edmund? The Queen's voice rings through the chapel. She stands in the doorway, alone but radiating authority. No one moves, no one breathes. Your Majesty, Lady Sarah starts, but the Queen silences her with a look. I have watched this performance unfold, Her Majesty says, moving into the chapel with measured steps. Watched you test my tailor's loyalty, his intelligence, his resourcefulness, all according to the ancient protocols. She turns to me. But they missed something crucial, didn't they, Edward? I meet her eyes, seeing in them the same quiet knowledge I've observed for years. They forgot about the buttons, I say. The silver-haired man frowns. Buttons? On Her Majesty's coronation robes, I explain. Every monarch's coronation robes have 13 buttons traditionally. But in 1953, the Queen's robes had 14. A small detail, one that even the official photographs don't show. Because the 14th button wasn't a button at all. My father's face drains of color. The Ghost Key. Was never a bloodline or a genetic inheritance, the Queen finishes. It was a choice. Each monarch chooses their own confidant, someone whose loyalty comes not from duty or destiny, but from understanding. Someone who notices the small details, the extra buttons, the hidden seams. She holds out her hand, and I place the USB drive in it. Your father's group, she continues, has spent decades trying to unlock secrets that were never meant to be unlocked. They believed power flows through bloodlines and protocols. They forgot that true power lies in the choices we make. This is impossible, Lady Sarah protests. The protocols, the tests, were a performance designed to expose you, I say quietly. Every step you thought you orchestrated was leading you here. The contaminated fabric, Harmless silk treated with almond oil. The secret bunker? Empty. Even Elena, both Elenas, were playing their parts. The two women step forward, standing beside the queen. Their faces are no longer identical. The subtle differences I noticed before now obvious. MI5, the real Elena says. MI6, says the other. My father struggles to rise from his wheelchair, but Marcus Wellington places a firm hand on his shoulder. Stay seated, Lord Blackwood. Or should I say, former Lord Blackwood. The silver-haired man moves suddenly, reaching into his jacket. But before he can withdraw whatever weapon he's carrying, I pull the thread I've been fingering since entering the chapel. Above him, the ancient tapestry I've maintained for years falls, entangling him in centuries of woven history. A tailor always knows the weak points in any fabric, I tell him, as palace security officers emerge from hidden doors. The queen watches as they're led away. My father, Lady Sarah, the silver-haired man, and their conspirators. Centuries of tradition have taught the monarchy how to deal with those who reach too far, too fast. The gala? I ask her. We'll proceed as planned, she replies, though perhaps with slightly less drama than our friends intended. She studies me thoughtfully. You knew from the beginning? I suspected when I found the real contaminated fabric sample in their possession. The almond scent was too perfect, too theatrical. Real poison is far subtler. And you let the performance play out. As you taught me, Your Majesty. Sometimes the best way to expose a false seam is to let it unravel naturally. She smiles, the same smile I've seen during countless fittings. You understand, Edward, that your life will never be quite the same now. The real Ghost Key protocol is not about power or secrets, I finish. It's about protection, ensuring that someone outside the royal family knows the truth, can act as a counterweight when necessary. Your father was once considered for the role, but he saw only the power, not the responsibility. She sighs. The crown's true strength lies not in its authority, but in its ability to endure. Sometimes that requires a steady hand with a needle and thread, and sometimes it requires someone who knows when to cut the thread entirely. The chapel grows quiet as the last light of day fades through the windows. In less than 40 hours, the grand ballroom will fill with diplomats and dignitaries, none of them aware of what almost happened here. The gala gown still needs finishing, I say. If you'll excuse me, Your Majesty. Of course. But she stops me before I reach the door. Edward, the real reason I chose you, it wasn't just your attention to detail or your loyalty. Oh? It was your understanding that sometimes the strongest garments are the ones that show the least strain. That true power lies not in what people see, but in what they don't. I bow slightly. A lesson every good tailor learns, Your Majesty. As I walk back to my workshop, I pass the grandfather clock that has marked so many moments of this strange journey. Its chimes echo through the corridor, marking the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. The palace settles around me, its secrets once again safely contained within its walls. Tomorrow, I will create a gown worthy of a queen. I will measure and cut and stitch, each movement a reminder of the trust placed in me. But for now, I simply sit at my workbench, threading a needle in the fading light. After all, every great story, like every great garment, must end with the perfect stitch.